Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are gonna solve another lead code problem which is called majority element. We'll be using the Boyer-Moore voting algorithm to solve this problem. So the algorithm helps us to find the majority element if it exists more than its half of its length. For example, it should exist more than whatever its length is divided by 2. For example, these are 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. So if it exists more than 1.5, which is 2, then we can use this algorithm, and this is the only case they are saying us to focus on. The majority element is the element that appears more than n by 2 times. So you may assume that the majority element always exists in an array. In this case, the majority element is 2, which comes 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you see it's coming 4 times, which is more than the length of this array, right? Like if you divide it by 2. So that's what they want us to return, the maximum element which is coming the most of the time. So let's try to solve this problem by using the Boyer-Moore voting algorithm. So this algorithm, what it does is basically it says us that you go and define two variables. One is called count and the other is called candidate. So what I'll do is I'll declare two variable called count and another is declare. So I'll say you what to do. So for example, count is I wanna count, right, how many times a variable is coming. So what I'll try to do, if a variable is coming, then I will increase it by 1, and then if it's not, then I'll decrease it, and you'll see. And candidate is what I want to return at the end, like which number is basically the one which is the maximum amount. So that candidate, in the beginning I wanna initialize it as null, and later what I want to do is I want to use the for loop for let num of nums. So I'll use of loop, for of loop. So num of nums, I'm traversing through all of the nums array. In this case, the nums array, for example, I'll show you using this array, yeah, for your sake. What I'll do, I'll say nums equals to this, and it's just for example here. I'll comment it down so we can refer it here. Okay, so for example, when we are going through each of the number, what I want to do is I want to see, okay, if my count equals to 0, this is a really important if condition. So I'm saying if my count equals to 0, if this condition, whenever it is true, whenever I'm going through this, then what I want to do is I want to take this candidate here and I want to give it the value of num. So whenever my count is 0, doesn't matter whenever my count is 0, just take this candidate variable and give it the value of that specific num. If it's here, or wherever it is. If it's here, then give it 2. If it's here, then give it 1. And at the end, I return my candidate. And in between this, what I do, every time I go through this for loop, regardless of this condition, I go on and I say that my count plus equals to, every time increase my count if my condition is true, which is if my num equals to my candidate, which is this, right? And if that condition, increase it by 1, otherwise decrease it by -1. I hope that makes sense. So every time I'm going through this, what I want to do is I want to increase my count by 1 if my num is equals to my candidate. So candidate we will assign here, and num is what we are looping through. So if my this num is equals to my candidate, whatever I give, then I want to increase it by 1, otherwise I want to decrease it by 1, and at the end I want to return a candidate. Now let me teach you step by step. So first, what happens when my count equals to 0, right? Here candidate equals to null, so it goes here, it says okay, num is 2 right now, yeah. So it says okay, if my count equals to 0, which is true, it is 0, it says okay, go and give this candidate equals to num. So what happened at this case, our candidate becomes num. Candidate is what? 2. Num is what? 2. So candidate becomes 2, right? So it becomes 2 here. Yeah. And after this step it goes and says, okay, is my num equals to my candidate? So what is num? 2. What is candidate? 2. So it says, okay, if both of them are equal, then make my count variable equals to 1. So now we know this 2 has a value, like it comes at least one times. That's what we are trying to do. We are trying to keep count of this candidate. The next time we go up again here, so num is 2 this time, this one, and count is obviously 1, so we won't go here, we will go here. Then we'll say count should increase by 1 if my num equals to my candidate. And what is candidate? Candidate is 2. So we say, okay, num is 2, candidate is 2, again increase it by 1, so it becomes 2. We go here again. This time also this condition is false, so we come here and our num is 1. So we say, is num equals to candidate? No, it's not, right? So we go and decrease the count by -1. So it becomes 2 minus 1, 1. We go again. This time our variable is here, num is here. They are again not equal. We again decrease it and become 0. We again go. This is where our num is, right? And because we are looping, this is where we are. This time it says, when before coming here it encounters this if condition, and it says, okay, your count is equals to 0, then make your candidate equals to num, right? So candidate becomes here num is what? 1, this one. So nums become 1. Then it says, okay, is your num equals to your candidate? Yes. So candidate is 1, num is also 1, so increase it by 1. Next time our nums become 2, and it says, okay, count is equals to 0. We say no, count is not equals to 0, count is equals to 1. So it comes here and it says, is your num equals to your candidate? So num is 2 right now and candidate is 1, so it says no. Then it says, okay, decrease it by 1, so it becomes 0. Then we go up again, and this time we are at the last num, which is 2. So this time it says, okay, if count equals to 0, which is true, give your candidate the num value, which is this value. So it gives itself 2, yeah, here. And it says, okay, is your num equals to your candidate? Which is true. Num is this and candidate is also this, so they are equal. So increase it by 1. So we increase it by 1. After this nothing happens and we return the candidate. What is candidate? Candidate is 2, which we have assigned here. So we return the candidate, and when we do that we get our output, which is 2. So I just have to put it here, one condition, if num equals to candidate, let's see, command B. Spelling error, let me fix it. So we got a problem, which is, let me see why. It's because of this. I'll just remove it. 1 minus 1 count plus equals to num. If num equals to candidate, then return candidate. I mean, it should be fine, not sure why. Here I've done a silly mistake. So my count equals to 0. We used to use triple equal. What I was giving it the equal value. So if count equals to 0, right? Now if I run it, this should work. So you see, we got the solution, and if I submit this should also be working fine. So yes, it beats 66% of the user, and it's a pretty good solution. And it also helps us to solve the problem in linear time and in O1 of space. So that's it for today's problem, and I'll see you guys in the next problem.